All right, welcome. Welcome to another edition of In Class with Dr. Gray Carr. Let me apologize for being late and tardy to the party today because I decided that I was going to live my best COVID life. I've been working out, so I went out to walk around a reservoir in my neighborhood. And as I was walking, it's a beautiful little pond, and there's like people out there, you got to wear a mask. There was a guy behind me talking. He didn't have his mask on the phone. And I'm like, trying to get away from him, but he's like walking fast. So I'm like, I shot out the park. And on my way, I found a new trail into the woods and nobody was on it. And I was like, look at this blessing. Nobody's here. And it is beautiful. It's amazing. So sometimes when things are, annoying and we don't fall into the annoyance, but we allow ourselves to find a different way out, you discover new things. And I think some of us sit in discomfort.
Sis, sounds like you ran into SU. That's the Yoruba would say, oh, I sent SU over there so you could decide to find this new trail. No question. If you can't sit at the crossroads, how many times have we been talking about this? And since May, huh?
Yes.
So to everybody watching, listen, you might be apologizing. I don't know who you apologizing to, Prof, but it's certainly not me or anybody because we haven't missed a Saturday since May.
No, we have not missed a Saturday, but I'm like super anal about making sure we're up by noon. And, it's like, oh, we got to do this at noon. Exactly. And I was like, man, I'm going to be late for this thing today, but that's all right.
You just taught us a lesson. That was another lesson. We needed that lesson.
All right.
Don't sit in your discomfort. Don't sit in your discomfort.
No, I was like, this dude, if you don't shut up. And I was getting angry. I was like, but I'm supposed to be out here, freeing my mind and my body. And I'm like, I'm annoyed by this guy. I was like, what? I wonder where this leads,
I love it. I love it. Always.
Oh, how are you? You good?
Oh, I am fine, beautiful. We're suffering through this thing, but like you said, we just gotta listen for the lessons and make our decisions. I see. Wow, that's Richard Poe's Black Spark, White Fire? The other way, but next to Baldwin. Oh, yeah. People don't know that book right there. Look at you. Yeah. Woo! Yeah, you better. That's right. Oh, Poe is an interesting dude. I never met him, but he quotes Asa Hilliard and all them in their book. That's once again, proof positive that, there is no color. Knowledge has no color. That's a dude that decided, let me see what these black cats are writing about. And then he looked up, oh, wait, it was black. You know what? Let me write a book. That's wow. I hadn't seen that cover in a long time.
I'm going through, because I'm not even trying to compete with you. You got this.
No, we're all together. Ain't no competition. We all working together.
But I was like going through, my dad left me a bunch of books, and then of course I have a bunch of books myself, of course. And then there are books in boxes and in storage as well. But I just wanted to, have a conversation today because I came across a tape that I think you were a part of. And it was a tape of Tupac from 1990 something. I think 1996. And 93. 93, okay. Yeah. So as I was listening, and I'm gonna play 3 pieces of it, and I want us to have a conversation about it because I think it's a springboard as I watch folk like Ice Cube tell us not to vote. And, listen, I went through the 22-page agenda.
Yes,
it's valid. Tavis Smiley had one that was valid.
Yes.
Nanny Helen Burroughs had one that was valid. We have always had these. The points are good, but as soon as you, in your ignorance, tell people not to vote. So we're gonna have a little bit of conversation today about that. But Tupac, because we have to do this, that, and the other. And you inspired me so much last week. And let me just thank you, the ancestors, the Holy Spirit, whomever is making this possible, and the people, of course, who are supporting this every week.
Yes.
When you held up those 2 books about the fall of America.
Oh, yeah. Packer the Great. Woo. Yes.
I went down that rabbit hole after we got off, and I said, what if it has already fallen? So I'm like, what did Rome look like when it was fallen? So I'm like Google searching, all of the fallen, what happened the last days of Egypt? What happened the last days of Greece? And I was like, America is already fallen. Then we're going through, Drew and I had the conversation on Monday. That's what brought that to the fore Tuesday, because Monday was a holiday.
And if y'all haven't seen that, you need to go back and watch that video. That is one of the most brilliant and well put 20+ minutes of any, I mean, people try to over theorize things or at least try to put them in ways. That plain language exploration, I think everybody start right there. We get our brother O'Shea Jackson, we get Brother Cube to watch that. It might help, but that was brilliant, Karen. Oh my God, you and Drew, y'all put that down.
But you sparked that, you inspired that, because I said, now, how are we not falling when we're not even literate? You go down the list of nations that have better literacy, like people who can read. And then it's no wonder that we are where we are, because we don't critically think, we don't read well for comprehension, education. We're not even in the top 20 anymore.
No.
And among industrialized nations, and you think about that and you say, well, what does a fallen nation look like? So the only thing we have going for us is our military? Okay.
That's yeah, you keep people in line till you can't keep them in line anymore. I thought it was very insightful how you went back to the 19th century. As you said, you kept going back to do comparative analysis, and you realized that the United States wasn't in those top tiers in the 19th century. I mean, it took, and of course, public education in the South, as Du Bois reminds us in Black Reconstruction in America, was a Black idea. When Black folk came during Reconstruction, they said, you know what, we weren't allowed to educate ourselves. So not only are we going to create a system for ourselves, we're going to create a system for everybody. And then white folks locked them out. But of course, the United States was still expanding then. So the Industrial Revolution, and then you get 2 world wars. So it's possible. But the decline, as you so astutely noted in that conversation, began some time ago. And the what Packer calls the great unraveling, what Chris Hedges called America the Farewell Tour, started a long time ago. And literacy, it was very interesting as well that you noted how Cuba basically erased literacy. There's a very good film called Maestre, which talks about how in the wake of the Cuban Revolution, Black people, Afro-Cubans, led by Afro-Cubans really, fanned out across that island, teachers, mostly women. And they interview some of these elders who are now elders, the survivors still living, say, what did y'all do? Are you kidding? It was 1959, our people couldn't read and write, let's go. And they literally wiped out illiteracy by just going to the villages. Let's go, let's do it. And I thought it was, the analysis you laid out was not partisan, because you walked us through like the 7-year plan, the 6-year plan, even though, we need to deal with economics. We need to deal with this question of value. We need to deal with this question of education and literacy. We need to deal with the question of race. But when you said, that part of our challenge, as you said, is not, we haven't developed our capacity for critical thinking. That's a step as you think about Brother Tupac, and yeah, you bringing back memories. Wow. That was something that he laid out, and I think he demonstrated the value of literacy more, even as he was critiquing the idea of study. By the end of that talk, if memory serves me correctly, he really talks about the fact that the previous generation didn't share the experiences with us in a way, so I've got to go through them again. People understand what's the value of study. But anyway, please, yes.
And that was what, as I'm thinking about, why do we have to keep doing this over?
Right.
You're pulling out Carter G. Woodson, and it's like,
Ooh.
yeah, he did the work. W.
Yeah,
He did the work. I'm sure there were people who did the work before that. And even as I'm going through the 22 pages, I'm like, I've seen this before. I've seen this before. And what is void of is women. How do you put together a whole plan for Black America, and women aren't at the table? And I'm not talking about, misogyny and blah, 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 but it's like, it is unfathomable that they're, not a Juliette Marveau. You're going to bring an economic person to the table. You're not going to bring any.
I think, it's interesting.
Weird.
Well, I think that in terms of an approach, first of all, you're absolutely correct. And if I remember when Angela Davis and Ice Cube had a dialogue. This was while the smoke was still smoldering in the wake of the '92 rebellion in LA. And, one of the things Angela Davis raised was, in hip hop, there's this kind of masculinist core, and you've been part of that. And one of the things Cube responded with was, well, when I say man, I mean we. And she was like, well, no, we need to develop the language. And they went back and forth about it. But in some ways, I think, and I certainly can't speak for that, brother, but I imagine that what you're raising is something that he might say, you know what, you're right, let me handle that. Because the economist that he did consult with, at least from what I understand, he came on Roland's show. We talked just on the air, just very quick. Derek Hamilton, it's an interesting guy. He's an economist at Ohio State. I talked with that brother. We were actually on a panel together, University of Pennsylvania, on reparations back before this plague hit. Brilliant brother. But yeah, we need a Julia Lim Alvo. We need the economists from previous generations to help us understand, because what Q might not know is, in fact, that much of it isn't new. I mean, you walked us through Whitney Young. We talked about that, the Marshall Plan. I mean, but I think if he was armed with that.
I discovered that, and I was like, oh, he had a whole plan. Whitney Young had a whole plan that was well thought out. And I feel like in many ways it's disrespectful to ignore. Like, I wouldn't start as if I'm creating, and even these classes, there's blueprint for that. When you start talking about the griots around the trees, that our ancestors used to, this is how we taught. Socrates borrowed that from our African ancestors, teaching around a tree, teaching around. This is a recreation of that, but this is original.
It's not original. Du Bois says that in the education of Black people. He says, I once saw a perfect system of education. Now, this is a man, obviously, all the degrees of it. He said, I once saw a perfect system of education. It was under a tree in West Africa. To your point, he get in the circle. Let's get the text. Let's chop this up. And we never left the cipher. We still get in the circle. This is the electronic circle. So no, it's not new.
I love it. All right. So Tupac, when I saw this, I was like, the great Carr was in the room.
Oh my God.
I want to know everything. All right. I'll play this first clip. It's 2 minutes long. I hope you can hear it. So let's start.
They say we got war, and in war, everything is good. It's all good. You feel me? And when I say thug life, I mean that shit. Because these white folks see us and stuff. I don't care what y'all think. I don't care if you think you a lawyer, if you a man, if you an African American, if you whatever the fuck you think you are. We're thugs and niggas to these motherfuckers. And until we own some shit, I'm gonna call it like it is. How you gonna be a man and you start? Because we have to walk about 5 different houses and a man in either one of them motherfuckers. How we gonna be a man? How we gonna be African American? We gonna stay there, and that's real, man. It's like a motherfucker. I had nightmares. I mean this shit. I'm dead serious. Whoever I heard, I apologize. But I had nightmares, bro. I swear to God. Shit changed me. I used to be happy. I used to talk good. I used to talk without cursing. I used to walk, but goddamn, they took the concept. They took Yusef. They taking out niggas younger than me, man. And we ain't doing shit. Nobody Hutton died 17 years fucking old. When we 17, you know what we doing? Killing each other. You know that shit kills me, man. Little Natasha got a bullet on the motherfucking back, and they did one of y'all do a fucking thing. This shit crazy. Only reason I came is so I could curse with y'all and get y'all in the right motherfucking track. We are dying. We ain't got time for nothing except war. And I don't care how you got to be at war, you need to put yourself in that mind space so you can be there. If I got the thug to be at war, I'm a thug. If you got to be a Muslim to be at war, be a Muslim, but be at motherfucking war, and let's go fucking shoulder to shoulder start doing something. We can't do with so much marching, y'all. And I know y'all think it's right, but we can't. They not think we've been marching for damn near 100 years. We are marching on the anniversary of when we marched 25 years ago.
Couple of things in 2 minutes. Tupac talked about being a thug, talked about us being at war, talked about children not being able to be children because we're killing each other, talked about nothing changing. So if you're not at war, doing something in any way that you can, you're not of service, you're not of use, you're not of value. 2 minutes. That brother, 20-something, I think he was 23 years old. You were in the room that day, Dr. Carr. You were on a panel. Tupac Shakur got up to speak. Tell me about that day.
Well, that hit so hard. That was the year after Juice came out, which had a lot to do with that energy I think the young brother had. We were in Indianapolis, and you know, Indiana has a Black Expo and has had it for decades. At that time, the Indianapolis Public Schools had an Office of Multicultural. Sister Pat, the director, one of the associate directors, my very Mashariki Jawanza, she and her husband, Kamal, are leaders in fact, she's the female co-chair. Talk about gender and balance. They have an elected female co-chair and male co-chair in COBRA, National Council of Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. Reparations actors, these old school Pan-African nationalists, cut their eye teeth in the African education movement in Ohio and out in Palo Alto with the African Center Schools. So anyway, Mashariki was working for the school district at the time. And we were in Ohio and in Columbus, and we had this radio show that we did, Free Your Mind. We reading and we on the radio, doing what kind of, like you said, nothing new. We just do it every Saturday morning. Come think of it. It's what we talked about last week. So at any rate, the tapes, that's when you had to have cassette tapes. So, you know, it's basically, we hustling. We would record the broadcast on Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, get off the air at 11, drive to East Columbus to this place called the African Center for Study and Worship. The brother and sister who founded it, Brother Mariba Kelsey, was on faculty at Ohio State. Very important brother. He's in Atlanta now. He's from Atlanta. He and his wife, and Nandi, and their daughters, Reba and Romani, their son, Madibo, and then this collective of Black folk had a storefront, East Columbus. We had a study group on Friday night. Saturday, we do the radio show, make cassettes. We bought one of those bricks where you could put one cassette in and make several others. We had learned the technique from the brothers in the nation, sisters in the Nation of Islam, because you know that's how they used to do Farrakhan. You speak, and then in the back, they be making the tapes. When it's over, you buy the tapes. So we got one of the machines, and we would duplicate tapes, sell the tapes for $5 a piece, and use the money to pay the radio station for the next week. So we just keep going. So anyway, the tapes started going around. We started getting calls. People heard them in New York. And from Indianapolis, Indiana, it was a brother who used to collect books who had gotten the tapes in Indianapolis. And he told Mashariki and them, they heard the tapes. They said, well, y'all got to come to Indianapolis for Black Expo. So we drove from Columbus to Indianapolis for the Indiana Black Expo. 2 years before that, remember when Mike Tyson was at the Indiana Black Expo and in Desiree Washington and the beauty pageant and the things went down and sexual assault. And then rape. And then he's in jail in Marion, Indiana, right outside of Indianapolis. So we come and all these roads converge in 1993. Tyson is locked up. They've got Tupac to be kind of like the headliner for the youth conference. They've got us talking at the youth conference, and there must have been, there maybe 500, and these are teenagers and like middle school, high school students in this. When you hear all that noise, yeah, it's almost all teenagers and preteens, you know what I'm saying? Because they love Tupac. In fact, this was just maybe a year or two after All Eyes on Me, I guess. So Brenda Got a Baby, Keep Your Head Up, all that stuff. You know, Tupac is there. And it was a year after Juice came out. So now he's moving into this celebrity kind of mix, but you could see that the American commercial kind of machine was already framing him. And he, you know, I remember he got into that.
I have that in this, yeah.
Oh, okay, good. So we'll get to that. So we got down there, and we got there a day before the youth conference, and the expo was already going. The other converging stream that people watching that wouldn't know about, that was the year that Haile and Shrikiana Garima had finally completed and released Sankofa, the film. It was 1993. So they had invited Haile in to screen the film. It came out in May. And Haile Garima, who is one of the planet's most, Haile and Shrik, his wife from Detroit, he's from Ethiopia, Gandara, Ethiopia. And they are two of the most brilliant culture keepers. In fact, their son, Marawi, has a film that's coming out on Netflix because Ava DuVernay worships Haile Garima. And she's using her Array platform to launch the next generation of Garimas. In fact, he just came back from Europe, and in fact, it's coming out on Netflix soon. It's about gentrification in DC, because his mother made a film about gentrification on DC 25 years ago. So anyway, so Sankofa is out. So at Indiana Black Expo, they screen Sankofa. We go out to dinner. It's the first time meeting Haile Greenman. Now that's like my jack. Now I hang with Haile all the time, you know. So because he was on faculty at Howard. Then we're supposed to meet the next day to go over what we're gonna do the next day for the youth forum. Tupac was supposed to be at the meeting. Tupac had a last minute change of plans. So the first time we saw him was just before what you just played. Change of plan was, I'm gonna go see my mans. I can't be this close and not see Mike Tyson. So the day we were all meeting, Tupac went to Marion to see Mike. So this energy you're seeing there, this is Tupac being who he is, and he just came back from seeing Mike Tyson in jail. So all this, you know, I hear y'all, you know, and so that panel, myself, Dr. Belethea Watkins, who's on faculty at Howard now, my very good friend, we went to law school together. Brian Water Harris, who's a lawyer in North Carolina. We were all graduate students at the time. And a fourth person, Khalid Abdul Muhammad. Khalid Muhammad is sitting over there. So, you know, it's like one person, two person, three person. So, and then it's like Brian, Belethea, myself, then you got Tupac. No, then you got Khalid, you got Tupac. Tupac sitting on the end. Before we went out, we backstage talking. We all sitting around saying, Tupac has this whole entourage of these elders. Some of those cats we knew because we had been, you know, involved in the Pan-Africanist movement, reparations movement, state group. Some of these guys go back to the Panthers. Some of them were his mother's kind of comrades. RNA, Republican New Africa people, you know, people. That's, again, when I say people now talking about reparations, if you don't know those people, you really are welcome to join. We need all the momentum we have, but that's the reparation. All this stuff was together. It is baked in together. So Tupac is surrounded by these cats in part because he's trying to catch up. Because he's talking about, you know, my mom, we got short circuited in this. My mom laid it all out on the line. And now, you know, I didn't get, but he's got them. And you can see, you can almost feel the tug of war going on. Because here's a young brother who's at the center of American entertainment capitalism. And he was already here. And now he's going here. At the same time, his heart and his brain are with the people. And so all these forces are around him, and he's trying as best he can to get some of these elders. And in that brief conversation, it wasn't more than maybe 20 minutes that we were standing there talking before we went out. You know, it was very clear that his trajectory, first of all, he was brilliant, as you can see, magnetic, charismatic, and hungry to make sense of things.
Yes.
So one by one, I think it was Brian, then Belethea, then myself, then Khalid, we had gone and made very short presentations because we've been doing workshop stuff before, but then this was the big meeting in the auditorium. And one by one, we're laying out the history. We're basically doing an indictment. You know, we talking about the history, and then of course, Khalid goes after me and just blows the place up. So it's almost like with every speaker, it's just getting hot. So then here comes Tupac. So what you just played was preceded by basically almost like a I don't know, like a hip hop record where everybody is just going hotter and hotter and hotter, and then Khalid hands it over to Tupac, and so he's like, look, I'm telling y'all now, I don't care what we call ourselves, African American, African, we niggas to these people, and I'm gonna tell you right now because I just came back, and so what he's laying, if we don't act, in fact, Carter Woodson, you know, Professor Hunter, you have, you know, your vision is on it. One of the first conversations we ever had was about that miseducation of the Negro, and now I can't leave it. The book's just haunting, right? You're gonna have us, we have to bring out another edition, and it has to be surrounded by a lot, because you're right. I mean, I see the vision as you laying it out. There's an appendix in the miseducation of the Negro, and I was reminded of it the other night. I was watching a think tank, a quintet of young Black scholars, Jared Ball, who you know, of course, Yeli Chile, who's professor, Todd Burrows, who else is in that collective? Majiba Fariwat is in it, she's in Ghana, and this brother Quasi Kanadu, who is one of the most brilliant scholars on the planet. Quasi says, and he reminded me, there's an appendix in this book, and the appendix, Carr Woodson, the first appendix says, much ado about a name. And he's saying, everybody arguing should we be Africans, Negroes, colored, what? And Carter Woodson says, that there is nothing to be gained from running away from the word Negro. You can take whatever name you want, but he says that it does not matter so much what the thing is called as what the thing is. So when you played that clip, and Tupac said, whatever you call yourself, we N-words to these people. Do you understand that until we have the power to he doesn't say disrupt, but to stop what they doing to us, whatever we call ourselves is not, and Woodson in 1933 says, what you call yourself is less important than what the thing is. We are in a condition, and it ties to what you and Drew were talking about. In this condition, what will trigger us being able to put together collective effort? And that's where Quasi on the collective of the Black Lash call. Actually, they did a Black Lash thing on Chad Boseman and Pan-Africanism. I was watching it, and they wrote a couple of position papers. So I read Quasi's position paper, and I had to text her, but I said, brother, this is flat foot brilliant. Because what he says is, I disagree with Woodson. In fact, Quasi is, man, his folks out of the Caribbean, out of Jamaica. He spent a lot of time in West Africa, brilliant scholar. He's published a number of books. And I'll mention one of them, folks, because he has his own publishing company. It's called Transatlantic Africa. Quasi Kanadu. This brother right here, everybody should get down with this brother. Quasi Kanadu was not a joke. He's deeply studied in spiritual traditions as well. So he said, I don't agree with Woodson. And in fact, he said, I had a conversation with Woodson.
Hold that up.
I'm sorry. Yes, Transatlantic Africa is the name of the book by Quasi. And this is his publishing company, Diasporic Africa Press. So he says, I don't agree with Woodson. I think names are important. Although Quasi would say, I want to get rid of the names Black and Negro because I don't think they can be rehabilitated because they are labels that speak to this force of violence. And he quotes James Baldwin, and he makes a very passionate case for doing that. In fact, you sure have one today, you're Negro. I got this in Bahia, in Salvador, Bahia.
What does that even mean? I was going to ask you about it after.
Oh, yeah, no, but I'm just thinking about the names in terms of what Tupac said. It's the Union of Blacks for Equality, the Black Union for Equality. In other words, they have this, it's like a Black Power organization. We were in Salvador Bahia in 2005 to work on curriculum. We had done the Philadelphia curriculum, so we went down there to meet with them, and they had a bunch of, oh my God, Karen, I mean, I'll tell you a story and continue with Tupac. We were in Bahia. They had the opening day of the Congress. So all these people are there, I mean, probably, I don't know, probably about the same size as any other Black Expo we did. It's about maybe 500 people. On stage were all these dignitaries. And then we were sitting in the front row, all the teachers who had come. And so the governor, all these people in Bahia. And then we were there, the school teachers from the United States, Black school teachers, and then the Black school teachers in Brazil, because we know Brazil's got the largest number of Black people outside of Africa. And so behind them were the school children. And they brought these little school children there, I guess we would say first, second grade, elementary school students out, and they had on African clothes. And they stood in the front. And so there's the stage with all the big, here's these children standing out down front, and here we are in the front row standing. And they come out, and then everything is quiet, and they say, Kosi Sikile Africa, Malu Pagani Supandovayo. We was trained in the nationalist community, that's the hymn that came out of South, and it's a hymn, it's not an anthem. Just when a hymn and an anthem, anthems usually talking about killing somebody, bombing something, no. Hymns are praises. So when we hear God Bless Africa, Kosi Sikelele Africa, the so-called African National Anthem, and it now is the South African National Anthem because they combined it with that old Africana thing they used to sing. But it's a hymn. It started as a church hymn. God bless Africa. God bless the people. God bless the trees. God bless these little children. Portuguese is their first language. They Afro-Brazilian, but we were trained. When you hear Kosi Sikelele Africa, you do the same thing you do with Let Your Voice Sing. You stand. So immediately we stand up, and we're looking at on stage. So we just stood up thinking, well, that's what we do. We looked up, nobody has moved. But then we saw one by one, they started standing up. And then we realized, we looked back around, everybody else had started standing up too. Not because we stood up, but because they stand too. Not necessarily the elites, but it was the rank and file school teachers and the children. This is a song they're singing in Kosa. You understand? What a thing is named isn't as important as what the thing is. And when Quasi said, I don't know about Black and Negro, this is a Black Power organization. But in the next 3 days we spent in that conference, and then the whole time we were in Salvador, they kept referring to the fact we are African people. And our culture is distinct, but we are together. And these school children are so happy to show us their maps. They said, this is where we came from. And they had a map. They had maps of Africa and the lines going to Brazil and the Caribbean from different places. You know what wasn't on the map?
America.
Us. That's exactly right. And they said, that's why y'all here. So in other words, the thing we do in these schools, if we talk about slavery at all, drawing that line to Jamestown and stuff, and then we don't see nothing below, they do there, except they go there and don't see anything above. They say, that's why y'all here. So Pan-Africanism, the idea, and Quasi talks about this as well. How does Quasi define Pan-Africanism? Kanadu says, Pan-Africanism is us coming together for collective effort to pursue a common objective. And so when Tupac is there on that stage with the momentum of having just been to see Mike Tyson in jail, with the momentum of having just had police confrontations, with the momentum of being the villain in Juice and seeing how the culture is gonna frame him as this bad guy and these serial confrontations with police in the wake of the smoke of LA 92 the year before, when he was out there in LA when the thing goes down, in the wake of him struggling through his craft to, even as he's got songs with, you know, hey baby doll, you know, break out or be down, you know, I get around, but then it turns with Brenda got a baby, keep your head up. He's struggling through all that. And so I guess finally what I'm trying to say is that the collective action, the thing Tupac is urging us to, the thing Kanadu is urging us to, the thing we saw demonstrated in Brazil with the Black Power folks and all the government had to bend to them in that moment, it's the action. The thing you and Drew were talking about, it's the action that will allow us to move forward. And we should at least be able to agree on a couple of objectives to achieve.
I couldn't agree more. Let me play this second clip. This one
Okay.
is 3 minutes long. I hope it's in the
Oh,
order.
good. You bring back memories.
Just because she a female don't mean she got to stay on with the bags. That's bullshit.
Oh, wait, hold on. And I apologize for the audio, because this is old audio, and I'm snatching this off of something.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's just to set it up. He's talking about women because I think it's important. And we got to stop this. We got to stop mimicking white folk. In the 22-page document with Ice Cube, there's the picture of all of the blacks after Reconstruction who were in Congress. You know, that beautiful picture of, like,
Of course.
Pennyback and Pinchback, I think his name is, and a bunch of others, and they're sitting in a semicircle, and they're all, you know, dressed like white men, you know, and they have their hair slicked back, and, you know, and that's.
Can you imagine? And half these Negroes came out of slavery. Joseph Rainey, two senators, Hiram Revels and Blanche Kelso Bruce, they dressed up like they ain't never seen a plantation in their life.
But you know, when I initially saw this many years ago, I was proud, you know, because I'm like, look at them, you know. But I'm looking at it through fresh eyes now, and I'm like, all you're doing is imitating your oppressor, and you're trying to get validation to say, see, we're just as dignified. See, we're just as. I don't want to be just as.
Right.
That's an inferior model. I don't want to chase your level of dignity and humanity, because you don't have any. You couldn't have put people in bondage. You couldn't have raped children. You couldn't have done the things, strip people of their land, kill them, genocidal, and then put on a suit and slick back your hair and take a bath, and that somehow cleanses you. So to imitate that, and I just feel like in so many ways our people who have appointed themselves as leaders are absolutely imitating and doing a facsimile, a worse version of the thing that we're trying to get away from. I want a new thing, Dr. Carr. I want an old new thing. I want a thing, you know what I'm saying? I want us to be the thing that we were before this thing. And that requires something that I don't know if many of us are willing to do. So I wanted to put that out there. And Tupac in this speech, he's talking to the kids. He's like, I'm coming here to cuss y'all out. I'm cursing at y'all so that you understand, you know, I used to speak nice and I used to do all these things, you know, but the world does not adhere to this. Just okay. Come on now.
Before you press play, because when he walked in, before we went backstage, we were all there. And he came in from the back. First of all, he wasn't nothing tall. He's a little kid, like 5'1", 5'2", you know. when he came in, those children, particularly those girls, you would have thought, almost the hair came out my eye. I was a young guy at that point. You know what I'm saying? Almost the hair came out. My point is that he came in as a movie idol and as the biggest rap star there was. And so they're expecting him to be that guy. So what you about to play, this completely took them by storm. So anyway, please go ahead. I'm gonna.
So he's talking about women in the fight too, right? So and I know y'all gonna have to strain to listen, but please do.
You know what I'm saying? All the niggas and all the females. Just because she a female don't mean she got to stay on with the babies. That's bullshit. I would much rather have some of you females out there than some of you niggas. It's a whole bunch of them. You know, that whole city of we African Americans, everything equal shit, and it's NAACP, so I'm gonna speak on that shit. As I was reading the paper, I saw NAACP at a celebration for the Emancipation Proclamation. That's right. Okay. So, from what I just said, how is the NAACP still a business? Come on. How's the NAACP still a business? How's these motherfuckers still a business? Right on, yeah, that's cool too. That's cool too. We let them do that shit. We let them represent us. I want to talk about stand there and talk about he put his band in the color folks. What the fuck is that? They need to be grown black folks. They be outcome. Represent us to these white folks. And we be letting them do it. Because we proud. Because they got all the suits, they got offices and shit. And everything out, they call the NAACP. And we let them do that shit, represent us. You know, they make us look bad. We are too, I'm not trying to take up for the thugs and the gangsters and shit, but now I'm coming from a different school. I'm coming from the campus, and that's what they need. They went to the street element, and that's what they mobilize for. So, you know, that's what my mama did. That's my job. I'm gonna stay in the streets and get my thug niggas who was down for me in the streets. Because I'm gonna tell you, when my mama started cracking and I was by myself, this brother right here, Untitled Chapter, was the only person in this movement anywhere that took care of me. Okay? So there ain't no motherfucking struggle if you don't take care of your baby. Not just yours, but the other soldiers, you know? Look at all these soldiers sitting in jail. Where their kids at? Don't none of you motherfuckers give a fuck about them. Ready to carry a flag full way, son. You ain't taking care of these motherfucking kids. Or they parents. That's hypocritical. That ain't right. That shit ain't right, man. We got too many kids out here with nobody to put that in their head. Then you motherfuckers be mad when you see them again up in the courtroom. You know? So my wife raped her. Nigga, you left her by herself. Left her by his motherfucking self. So he know how to be a G from the crackers, and that's what he learned. He know how they want him to be. Nobody taught me shit. And my mama was a parent, you know? My mom would tell me, but she was too involved in it to sit there and really explain shit to me. You know? So it's a double tragedy because I'm like damn near forced to go through some of the shit that some of these soldiers went through. But because they didn't tell the new generation, they didn't arm us, I gotta go through the shit all over. You know, I'm still getting my ass kicked by police because the niggas back in the 60s been murdered every single one of them motherfuckers.
All right, few things. And we're just gonna go through it. And this is something I've been talking about day one since I started my radio show because it was the biggest disappointment. I think the biggest shock that I had was that these organizations that we put so much time, effort, energy, and trust in are not designed to free us. That was a shock to me. It was an absolute shock. To me, it was just real, and I'm just a person looking at the landscape logically. If you have an organization with branches in every city, that's a blueprint to get some stuff done. Okay, what are the 3 things we're gonna get done?
Right.
And let me use this platform to magnify it. That was my first call, Dr. Carr, was to the NAACP.
Wow.
NAACP, Urban League, all of these organizations, and my vision was, whatever you're doing, let's magnify it and get some stuff done. This is 2014. When I had Cornell Brooks on the show, I'm gonna call him by name, it was shocking to me when I asked that brother who was then the head of the NAACP, what are the 3 things you guys are going to be doing? What are your agenda items? He couldn't answer me. I went on the website. I'm imagining there's a game plan.
Yeah.
There was a homina. It was epic because everybody in the room at the time, it was just radio. We had no visuals. We all looked at each other like, how do you not? And either you came on the show thinking it was going to be like maybe other shows that you come on and we're going to softball. But I don't know you. This is the first time I'm ever, there's no understanding that this is going to be that kind of thing.
Right.
I'm asking questions. I need to know. We need to know. So I'm not putting them on a blast for any other reason other than to say that I think it's not necessarily their fault, no more so than it was Tupac's fault that his mother was on crack and that she wasn't able to give him that institutional knowledge, which he talks about, that he was left alone to have to figure this out on his own after she went through that and lost everything for the struggle to come back to raise this child and not be there. Because of the system, right? So I think it's almost.
Oh no, the system. As you keep on, the system. Tupac Shakur, Afeni Shakur, Assata Shakur. The whole damn government came for them. The fact that she was alive was a miracle, much less strung out. Her sister is in Cuba, had to be there to this day. So anyway, please go on. Yes.
So I just, when he talked about the NAACP and what they're doing, and again, they're a microcosm, they're a symbol. I'm not, shout out to Derek Johnson. God
no question.
Good brother from Mississippi. This is not an indictment on anybody, and I don't want us to go after him. But I need us to start to think about, again, the question I asked Ben Jealous when he was said, if there's magically a cure for all the things that ail Black people, you don't have a job, and you say, right, and I would be happy about that. That has to be the goal, that at some point, these organizations shouldn't be around 40, 50 years because we did the work. And if you can tell me, Dr. Carr, that in Cuba, people can go out into places where folks there's no technology, and teach people how to read, not even in a generation, not in 10 years, in a short period of time, you can't tell me an organization that's been in existence for 100 years shouldn't have some tangible check mark, not just people registered to vote, but like, okay, we're in this community. Every community that you're in should be pristine, should be amazing. There should be a program in. Every kid should be educated. There should be programs for jobs. And you should be working with the other organizations, because Tupac talks about that too. The gangs, this is why the thug thing, like, if the gangs could come together around a common foe, to band together, in many ways, the blueprint is there as well. And I feel like we can get this done in a very short period of time if we get out of our way and start to hold things accountable. And even in the 22-page plan that Ice Cube and them put out, at the bottom of the plan was Black accountability, Black responsibility, which I appreciated, but I think it should be up higher, because the truth of the matter is, begging and asking people to do stuff that we have the wherewithal and the ability and the talent and gifts to do ourselves, to me just feels like we're going to get more of what we've been getting, which is not freedom. And so I just think that, there needs to be an old new way of thinking. That's it.
No. This is the beauty of this moment. And this is something that Tupac understood, but even as he's voicing his frustration and a very clear-eyed analysis coming out of that frustration, we can't overlook the fact of the value of study, of the value of seeing patterns so that we don't make the same mistakes. Because as you were talking, I'm thinking about, and you mentioned Ice Cube, and you said about, I go back to his, maybe this was his second solo album, not Death Certificate. Yeah, Death Certificate. Yeah, because America's Most Wanted was the first one. Death Certificates, because really during this period when Tupac is doing this, Cube has turned from the NWA thing. He's rolling heavy with PE. In fact, Public Enemy was there. I mean, James Bond, some of the guys, S1Ws were there. But he's rolling heavy with the Nation. And you hear all this on that album, Death Certificate. He had a track on there, A Bird in the Hand. And he's got a line in there, fresh out of school, but I was a high school dad. He says, there's no help for this youngster. So I had to get a job and slave and be half the man that Whitey said. There's no room for the African. So I had to get a job at McDonald's. May I take your order, please? And he says, so, you know, should I look for help from Bush or Jesse Jackson or Operation Push? You ask me, the whole thing needs a douche, a Massengale. What the hell? Crackle sale in the neighborhood. To the neighborhood, Miss Johnson, Uncle Joe, and Todd Bridges. I mean, he's, in other words, this is Q. Who like Tupac.
Why do you know this stuff?
No, because understand, we're in school. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? We're in school, but we listen to all that stuff. And again, to your point, every generation makes the culture in their moment. But if you don't know the culture of the previous generations, you think what you're saying is new. And this is before he becomes the lovable man in barbershop part 2. Are we there yet? This is the cube that's scaring the hell out of America. And when Tupac is saying thug, it's the hate you give. But this is a generation before Angie Thomas writes a novel and it becomes Hollywood consumable fare. And, you know, about police. But no, what you're playing, that's why he said thug. In other words, this is what has been left to us. I'm not crazy. I didn't get the playbook, but I'm not going to lay out here and die. These cops beat me up because y'all didn't murder them all in the 60s. That's his level of analysis then. But basically what he's saying is, you didn't solve the problem, we inherited. So as you said, Derrick Johnson, very good brother, with the same kind of energy coming out of Jackson State and Tougaloo, and then the statewide branch NAACP, mentored in part, jegnated in part by Joyce Ladner, Dory Ladner, all those Mississippians who from, you know, down in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. This is Medgar Evers's people who took Derrick Johnson and said, come on. But Medgar Evers himself was a different kind of cat, fighting with Roy Wilkins, because Roy Wilkins at the National NAACP is like, no, we can't have all this. This is nonviolent. We got to negotiate with these people. Medgar Evers said, I'm a veteran. I got a gun in my house. Listen, I'm not. And then who is Medgar Evers' counterpart in Georgia? Vernon Jordan. Vernon Jordan goes to Medgar Evers and says, hey, man, you know, I'm thinking maybe about leaving the NAACP. And then Medgar Evers is like, look, man, I can't leave because my people are here and I'm committed to my people. But you should do what's best for you. And so Vernon Jordan is going to die of old age because of the decisions he made. Say, well, here's where maybe I can help. So Medgar Evers gets shot in the back. It's like Tupac is murdered. Like, you know what I'm saying?
And so, and part, because I want to play this last clip because it speaks to that.
Okay, yes,
we're talking again. We're not condoning violence on any level, but
on any level, including against us, because that's what this is what he said. This is the hate you gave, miss. You know what I'm saying? You killing us, so I'm just supposed to die. You know what I'm saying?
Last clip, yes. And then we're gonna finish up.
When them niggas out there with guns, what y'all gonna be doing? Watching that shit on TV.
Wait, hold on. I'm gonna start over. All right, y'all ready to listen? It's hard. Okay.
When them niggas get out there with guns, what y'all gonna be doing? Watching that shit on TV, marching, selling rifle tickets and shit, coming charges. What y'all gonna be doing? I just wanna know, because I know what the fuck I'm gonna be doing, but it would help me to know what my people is gonna be doing when I'm out there. Because I'm gonna tell you all the time, boy, you think you're gonna save the world. Don't you know they gonna kill your black ass? These people gonna bury you, and that's that. So all I'm gonna say in closing is that we got to be united under whatever. Don't let shit hold us apart. I don't care if you're from Cali, New York, or whatever, if you're a blood, a crip, or a thug, or a student, or a scholar, whatever. Don't let shit hold us back no more. We got to unite by any means necessary, and we got to fight something.
That's what I want to get to. First of all, the prophecy. when I was listening, I was like, wow. His mother said, boy, they're gonna kill you.
They're gonna kill you.
Trying to save the world. They're gonna kill you. And you talk about Vernon Jordan dying of old age, and I'm not saying that people who are
all want to die of old age. It's a beautiful thing.
Hopefully, God willing, you know, I'm trying to be 120 years, you know.
Inshallah, no question.
Yes, but that said, there is a price to pay when you're really messing with the system, and we know who's really not messing with the system by who gets television shows and who gets to continue along living. Just saying, you know, who do they magnify, and why are these organizations, as Tupac said in the last one, how are they still in business? Well, they're still in business because they're doing the business. They're still in business because they're not disrupting. They're still in business because the things that they're doing are not making us free, nor will they mess with anybody's pockets at the top of the food chain. So we have to start to ask ourselves, and I want to point this because there's an opportunity here. And I see this all the time. When we say some things about people, then it's a battle or it's a fight, and then there's more division. This is not about division. It's about critically thinking about how we unite.
That's right.
I think it's important to have an NAACP, Urban League, National Action Network, Rainbow Push, but I think it's also important that we require something of them. If you're going to be in those positions where you are speaking on our behalf to broker deals for television networks and all the other areas that, I don't know if that's your position, but we should be asking the questions. What are we getting from your entree into these spaces? And all of the money that you're receiving, because there's goo gobs of money coming down the pike right now, Dr. Carr, for all these organizations, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars coming into the coffers. Where are the dollars going, and what programs are you doing, and how is that free us? And if you're in our community, and we see no results from this, and it doesn't take a long time to recognize sunshine, then we need to require you to sit down, step away, move on, hand that check over to somebody that's actually going to do something with it. And as Tupac said at the very end of this, first of all, united. I don't care what part, there's been so much division over the last couple of years, and especially hyperly in the last year, that one has to ask, where is it coming from? How does it free us? How is this going to really, manifest into something? And listen, again, the talks around reparations, I'm here for it. They're old, they're deserved in the 22-page manifest. They're asking for repair and apologies and all of this. But the ultimate thing, and there's a lot of things in there that has nothing to do with the government that y'all put in, which is fine. They're all valid. They're all valid. But don't disrespect the ancestors who came before you, and let's embrace the whole totality of who we are and take it all the way back. So I just want to thank Tupac for being, there's a clip of him at 16, freaking brilliant. His mother may have been on crack and not there, but there are things that she imparted into this boy, this young man, and the reason why he is not here right now.
That's right.
With Suge, as much as that he was somebody that was conscious and awake.
That's right. In fact, I'm glad you said that, because it reminded us that Afeni was with the Panthers. There's a bookcase of scholarship on the Panthers, but if you're looking for one very good book, it's one called Black Against Empire. That's very good. This is Joshua Bloom and Waldo Martin, The History and Politics of the Black Panther Party. It's like it's a very broad history of the Black Panthers, with the connections to Alabama, with the connections to the West Coast, of course, and then the global network. So it helps see the connections between the Panthers here and the internationalist movement. So it's very good, just for folks who want a good background reading to help us understand the generation, including literally that produced Tupac. And yes, you're absolutely right, Prof. Despite what his mother went through, his mother and father went through, something was passed to him that's passed to us. We've been talking about this question of, like you say, spirituality, religion. This isn't just about Africana worldviews, the different worldviews of people of Africa. We came from somewhere. And so one of the things Quasi Kanadu said the other night, and it says in his paper, he says, there is memory. Just like cells have memory, and blood and bone and brain has memory. He says, the archive of human memory is African, with the exception of the last few thousand years. And this trauma of the death camps and of enslavement and colonialism is very recent. But we have been trained to ignore two things. One, even valuing any of the things we can get through physical archives. And really, that's number two. Number one, we're trained to ignore the thing that comes down through our blood. In other words, no living thing wants to cease to exist. No living thing wants to be hungry. No living thing. And in fact, I mentioned this brother, Edward Bynum. He's he's a psychologist. Edward Bruce Bynum. These are just two of his many books. One's called The African Unconscious. Dr. Bynum talks about the fact, he really lays all these things come down through our blood, through our brain, through our cells and structures. What he would call the kind of organic memory. And then he says there are ways to access it. I love this book. It's called The Dream Life of Families, Psycho-Spiritual Connection. Dr. Bynum, Edward Bruce Bynum. He's interested because what he says is, don't ignore your dreams. People think, oh, I was dreaming, it's because of something I ate. He said, no, nothing about either of us, nothing about any human who's watching this or thinking about this did we create. This is two people who created us, and 4 created them, and 8 created them. We have all that. So when you go to sleep and you have a dream, Quasi was like, I don't agree with Woodson. And then he writes in his paper, he says, and I got a chance to talk to him about it because I had a dream that me and him was in this kitchen and we argued about it. You don't even ignore that. Why? You know what I'm saying? Because this is your memory. Ultimately, we are all connected to each other. Back to those first African women that gave birth to everybody on the planet. Do not ignore the spiritual. Oh, the spiritual, I don't deal with the spiritual. You deal with the spiritual every day. That feeling, that thing that makes you sick when you see a cop shoot somebody, or this white will come and shoot these white people. When this man Jacob Blake gets shot in the back, that thing that made your whole body sick before you went out with your Trump flag and tried to suppress it by arguing with these people, the thing that made you sick, you're ignoring it. Why? Because I'm your ancestor. You got an African great-great-great-great-grandmother. And that thing made you sick came from her. And it wasn't even about that person being black or white. It was because no human being who's in tune with who they are can stand for that kind of thing. If you can, it's because some other human being threw you off the rails. So whatever Fred did to Don, that he passed on to Don Jr. and Eric and all them, you didn't come on the planet with that. You know what I'm saying? You learned that somewhere. I mean, and if I'm saying that to say this, kind of like say he's putting them up. Tupac is giving voice to the thing he came here with. And he's trying to say, I'm trying to course correct. And what I've seen in my little 25 years on the planet is I'm here to tell y'all, we can do this, but the first thing we have to do is recognize the thing as it is. And I'm thinking about that. There's a philosopher in the University of Pittsburgh, Ronald Judy, who's got a book coming out soon, but I went to the bookstore looking for something else. Oh man, I don't know if I have it. It's a journal actually that he publishes. Oh yeah, Boundary 2. It's a journal that that's published out of Duke called Boundary 2. This is not something I would say necessarily people need to go get. It's mostly cultural studies, philosophy, but Ronald Judy has a piece in here called Restless Flying, a Black Study of Revolutionary Humanism. It just came out. And one of the things he says is that, you know, human society is in perpetual motion. It doesn't have one specific destination. It's just people moving. And of course, African people know that because even the Egyptians would say, we come out of ceaseless motion. Everything that exists is always moving. So if you put a microcosm on that and say human beings are moving, okay, so we're moving. Where are we moving to? Say, moving to is not as important as the fact that we're moving. Well, what do we want? Judy says, you know, we want human dignity. We want to improve the experience of humanity. And we generally want to do that collectively. So he quotes Frantz Fanon. And Fanon is like, what happens when that human desire to improve, to augment experience, what happens when it butts up against another group of humans who also want that, but think they have to do it a certain way? He says, that's when you start seeing liberation struggles. So when Tupac is like, you know, police stopped me. They said, what's your name? I said, Tupac. He said, what kind of name is that? He said, what's your name? My name is John. He said, what the hell kind of name is that? In other words, it's not that this cop is anti-human from birth. The cop is anti-human through socialization in a system that thinks that they've got to live as humans in a way that excludes this other groups of humans. That's where the name thing comes in. It's important. One of the ways to deny other people their humanity is to label them as something other than what you are. So these are Negroes, these are Black people, these are niggas. And then we say, no, we Africans. Why? That's not even a name we gave ourselves, but it don't mean what you mean. So we're looking for a name or a label to try to fight our way back into humanity, not in their eyes, ultimately in our own eyes. I just want to be free to eat. I don't want nobody to starve. I want everybody to get an education. So after the Civil War, Black people said, we're going to set up public education for everybody. Then white people come behind and say, Jim Crow, that system you set up for all of us, what? Nigga, you can't have it. What the hell? I was trying to get everybody. So what Tupac is saying, the NAACP comes into existence in 1909 because there's been a race riot in Spring the birthplace of Lincoln. The NAACP is a white organization that goes out to black and says, we need some black people to help us organize this thing. Because some of the black people had started the Niagara movement before that. So they meet up in New York, and there's a whole lot of good stuff on the NAACP. But I like the old stuff too, because it's closer to the founding. So people who wrote this stuff kind of knew some of these people. There's a good book by B. Joyce Ross called J.E. Spingarn and the Birth of the NAACP. I like that book because what Ross is showing is that when they started the NAACP, there are different interests involved. And some of those interests are people who are trying to make sure they're not persecuted either. Spingarn and them, Henry Moskowitz and them, there are white Jews. And as I say, we need to form a coalition to protect us too. Like I said, sure. Some black people skeptical. Ida B. Wells, I'm with y'all. Then they leave her off the committee of 40. According to Paula Giddings and them, reinforced by us, it was Du Bois. It was like, well, your friend, you and your husband friend is already on here, so we don't need you on there. Some of the white people come to Ida Wells and say, we need you on here. Ida Wells is like, nah, y'all already left me off and y'all already called the list, so I don't even want no smoke. But the NAACP is formed to move rights, but it's a national organization with local units. The local units were always more progressive. Medgar Evers in Mississippi, like, Roy, now I don't know about that. We got to do this. Robert and Mabel Williams in North Carolina, like, now we ain't giving up our guns. So they put them out the NAACP. They end up in Cuba. So when Tupac is engaging in that critique, I'm gonna tell you right now, two sisters I can think of, in fact. Kyla, what's Kyla's last name? It'll come to me in a minute. Kyla Crane. Anyway, she's a lawyer who worked with NAACP. She's one of my students at Howard Law School. Brilliant sister out of Michigan. Very important. Kyla Crane. And the young sister, Tiffany Dina Lofton. They got Tupac energy. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
They in the NAACP.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
They do. Yes.
Right.
I know Tiffany. Yes.
But yes, you know what I'm saying? But the NAACP is an organization that wasn't structured for that kind of energy. Because shortly after the NAACP comes into existence, founded by white people with black support, the only black person in leadership in the initial NAACP was Du Bois. He was being slick. He said, okay, I'll be on the board. Give me the magazine, which is why black people thought the NAACP was black, because he published his Black as Hell magazine, and the local branches get black. But very shortly thereafter, here come the Garvey movement. And NAACP is like, well, we can't do nothing with them. Yes, Universal Negro Improvement Association. So there's this tension that emerges. You see then in the NAACP, from then to now, that tension has never gone away. Ben Chavis. Remember when Ben Chavis was made the head of the NAACP? Around the same time, too, all this stuff was going on in the early 90s. Ben Chavis goes to Detroit to meet with the Black Nationalists, the Republic of New Africa. He goes to LA. Maxine Waters is there. Who he gonna meet with? The Crips, the Bloods, the Rolling Trey, all of it. And the NAACP goes berserk. You can't be. Chavis is like, look, man, I came out the Radical Church of Christ movement. Have y'all forgot I was one of the Wilmington 10? If we're going to be together, we don't have to agree on everything, but we must have some form of uniformity around these basic objectives. Going back to what Ronald Judy is writing about, what Fanon was talking about, we are human in the world. Can we at least agree that no one should be killed? Yes. Can we at least agree that everybody should have something to eat? Yes. What about shelter? Yes. Do you agree? Yes. But you got on a red rag on your head. Yes, but I'm your nephew. No problem. Come in the room. Then these other Negroes is like, well, we can't meet with them. I thought we had a common objective here. If we can't agree on that, these people who have based their humanity on excluding us will continue to harm us. And so Black Lives Matter, which Tupac, if he were alive, he would say, well, what do you think Tupac might think about Black Lives Matter? You don't have to speculate. Play that tape you just played. None of that stuff is, Black Lives Matter is a designated idea for people to protect themselves from the prospects of other people who are attacking them. Did you see, what's his name? Was it Tucker Carlson the other night? They tell me, I don't watch him.
I don't either. So no, I did not see him.
No, but apparently there was something where he said, in order for America to survive, we must neutralize Black Lives Matter. He's right. He's absolutely right. Because in his mind, America means white. And if he watched your conversation with Drew the other day, then he would probably say, she's right. And we got to stop them. Why? Because when I say America, I mean white people. I mean me. And so I guess back you tying this up, but I'm thinking once again about Ronald Judy in this. Ronald, in fact, let me just quote what Judy says. Judy says in his piece, he says, you know, when people are attacked, they form to protect themselves. And in America, we are formed to protect ourselves against what he calls a residual existential investment in the conceit of rootedness and homeland, the security and sanctity of blood and soil. Meaning what? These people who are enemies of humanity, who are wrapping themselves in whiteness to the death, who will pick whiteness over their own health with no mask on or no health care, they are so invested in thinking the only way I can protect anything in my damaged self-concept is by rooting it in blood and soil. It's like, but you're gonna die. Yes, but I'll die an American. Okay, you don't watch too many John Wayne movies. And so the solution to that is not, one of the things we can't do is make common cause with people who think that that position is defensible. No, I can understand it. I can sympathize and feel bad for you, but I cannot say that is an opinion that can continue into the future. It is deadly to all of us, including you. That's Baldwin's point. So I saw these young brothers from the Miami Dolphins the other day saying that they're going to sit inside. We'll sit inside for both anthems. Because when I'm listening to them, I'm like, that's a good concept, but now y'all need some education. Because see, that anthem that you're going to stay inside for was written out of blood conflict. The second and third verse, your ancestors, brothers who played for the Dolphins, Francis Scott Key said, y'all should be put to death. Death to the traitor, death to the slave. That's in the so-called Star Spangled Banner. That other one that you're talking about, the so-called Negro National Anthem, is not an anthem. It is a hymn. You know what I'm saying? And it is a prayer. You're going to stay inside for a prayer that the Johnson brothers wrote. That's why when James Weldon Johnson wrote in his autobiography, Along the Way, James Weldon Johnson tells the story. He said, my brother was on the piano. I'm out on the porch writing the lyrics. And my brother was in there playing what became the lyrics. I mean, playing the music. And I'm writing. I got the first verse, lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven went. And I'm listening to him. He said, my brother hit that note. And he said, as I got to the second verse, the tears started flowing. And if you know that lyric, that music, you know, the first sing-a-song is very conventional in the whole notes. Then he hits that blue note on the second one. Sing a song full of the faith that the darkness has taught us. Sing a song. Oh, James Weldon Johnson said the tears started flowing. He got to the second verse. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod. Felt in the days when hope unborn had died. And he finishes that. Then you get to the end. Then he gets to the last one and he makes the prayer. God of our weary years. God of our silent tears. You see, he's telling. Now, if you're going to hold hands with this white dude and y'all stay inside for that one right there, then you still have a fundamental misunderstanding of the society you live in. However well-intentioned, we just gonna stay. So who is the we? You know what I'm saying? Let them all sing, lift every voice and sing. Tupac has reached a layer of frustration in that moment, which in some ways, people love his music, absolutely. People love his interviews, absolutely. But that speech that day at the Indianapolis Black Expo, 38 months before he was, killed, assassinated, really, that speech might be the most important single commentary that, if you had to pick one, that young brother made, because I'm frustrated. I'm looking for the playbook. Can we come together? You Negroes that don't want to face this, later for y'all. I don't know how you wearing a military uniform and a police uniform. And as you talk about the decline of America, that is a question that's going to be raised more and more, because if they send police into these neighborhoods to shoot at their cousins and their mothers and fathers, Tupac had already told you, you need to either take that uniform off, put that weapon down, or turn it on somebody else. And we're not proponent violence, but what we're saying is we live in a field of violence. And so Tupac has reached his limit. And his mother says, as you said, in a terrifying moment of prophecy, you think you can change the world. Here's the simple thing is you can, if you get enough people to open their eyes. And then she says, they're gonna kill you. And for her to have to bury her child for that prophecy to come true, she's not saying that based on theory. She's saying it because she came through her iteration of that moment of confrontation. And a lot of Black people in the ground, and a lot more, as in Nkechi Taifa, my dear sister, getting ready to publish her book, Black Power, Black Lawyer, says, a lot of them are political prisoners to this day. Between Poor, Russell Maroon Schultz, you name it. Leonard Peltier. I mean, they still locked up. They still locked up. Roger Stone walking around free. Bill Barr has decided, I'm going to lock up everybody if y'all let me. And Leonard Peltier still in the American Indian movement. He's still in jail. Russell Maroon Stokes still in jail. You know, H. Rap Brown, the only living chairman of SNCC, still in jail. Now, what we doing? I'm almost sorry you played that, Karen, because it made me ashamed. It made me ashamed 27 years after that. Gosh, it's been longer since he gave that talk that he walked the earth. And to think about the fact that you and I and Drew, you and I and everybody you interview and talk to regularly, you and I and all those people who have decided that this is intolerable, not because we Black, but because we're human in the world. And we got something to say to the world based on all these centuries of our knowledge that will help everybody. And we got to now make a decision as to whether or not it's valuable enough for us to stop y'all in your damaged ways before the whole ball decides to stop us, meaning the human species. I'm almost ashamed to say that I haven't done more. Because if that young brother can talk like that, what the hell am I doing? I'm still alive. You're still alive.
No, no, we all have our little bit that we do, right? So no one has to do a lot. You have educated probably more people than anybody. I mean, when you talk about the size of your class, I feel like I haven't done enough.
No, Karen. But you know, let me say this right quick. When you say that, I think about the fact.
Oh no, the internet's trying it. Okay, when I say it again.
No, when you say that, I think about where I work and that critique of historically Black colleges that we've been making. We have to face this. Du Bois tried to make us face it, and then he couldn't stand it, and he just left the country, went to Africa. We don't, and you said this to Drew, we don't have to leave. One of the things about perpetual motion is we got to help build the place everywhere. So going back to Africa is not the solution. It is a solution. I ain't saying I won't go at some point, because yeah, you get tired, you know what I'm saying, of explaining your humanity. I'm gonna go somewhere and think about something else. But where I work, and it's not just Howard, it's every HBCU, there is a fundamental lack of consensus around the objectives of education for Black people. And so no matter how many students may be in a class I or anyone else teach, or a class you teach at Hunter with the children of the working class, the working poor who are trying, the message being sent is that you're here so that you can become one of those people who escape that stuff. It's like that's the overarching thrust of it. And so at a Black college, it's even worse because you see the class thing. If I had Kamala Harris as a student and seen her now, I would say to myself, I failed. I mean, let me be clear, because not just me, we failed. Why? Because if you can't speak truth to complete power, we want you as a prosecutor. We want you as the prosecutor to say, we don't charge for that crime. We don't want you as the prosecutor to try to figure out what do you need to say to speak to everybody. You can't speak to everybody. We're in a field of white supremacist violence. And if that means you don't win an election, fine, take your gifts and go somewhere else. But see, because you being there will delay our liberation movement by another generation. Because how many people you gonna pick off to try to defend what you're doing by saying we could be at the same time? You are not Mike Pence. And if y'all don't understand that's not Mike Pence, and if y'all don't understand that voting is not the only strategy, but it is a strategy and it is a tool, if you don't understand that, then you go sit next to Senator Harris. Because both of y'all don't understand. We should have a common objective. If you don't want your mama to get shot in the street, vote for somebody who can put pressure on to reform, to defund the police. Don't vote for the guy that's gonna send the cop to your mama's house. What the hell is wrong with this? Is fundamental. Now I wish Tupac was alive, because he would go cuss all these fuckers out. Talk, I ain't gonna vote. I can see Tupac. You know what I mean? Anyway, let me.
Oh, on that note, all right.
Let me
breathe, Dr. Carr, breathe. Oh man, I promise you, I don't know how. And let me thank Ajwa.
Oh, love, that's my sister. Yes.
That publicly once again.
Thank you, Karen.
if she didn't come to my studio to talk about the Crown Act and how
Yes.
Black women's hair has been throughout, and she's one of the people who's responsible for those laws that allow you to wear your hair any kind of way you want into the workplace.
Yes,
If
she
she
is.
didn't then tell me about her brother, Ray Carr,
Yes.
bring you
That's
by
my
the
sister.
hand to my studio that day. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Me too.
We wouldn't be sitting here today. So
I
everybody
love,
has
yes.
their role and their part to play in this race
Yes.
called life, and their baton that they're carrying to hand it off. I'm so grateful. You have profoundly shifted my trajectory, and I just want to say thank you.
Same here, sis. I want to thank you because what you built and what you're building, this is giving me life, and it's giving us life. And like you said, me and Audrey been rolling since she was a baby at Temple. That's my girl. And so my sister, and she's now in there pitching with both hands, trying to get this political system shifted, win this election. And, you know, it means the world to her, to me, to all of us that you built this platform. And as you said in the conversation with Drew, you know, you're looking for solutions. In other words, if Tupac said, y'all, what y'all gonna go march with? No, we got, Karen, listen to Karen. Karen is pulling it together, brother.
In his name,
in his name.
spirit. So I want to thank everybody who comes on to this class on Saturday, and who comes throughout the week, and who subscribes and hits the like button, and who's in the comments saying nice things and saying challenging things, but doing it with respect, and who understand that we're united, whether we agree or not. And I hate when people say, I don't always agree with you. Can we stop doing that? That in and of itself is putting negativity into it, because of course that's obvious.
Right.
What are we united around? So that's got to be the due north has to be, what
does that even mean?
That I can partake in this experience and add something to it and do my part.
What does that even mean, Karen? I mean, I don't even agree with myself. I mean, and so I'm saying, I said I failed at Kamala Harris. No, man, no, maybe not completely failed, but we don't agree with ourselves.
Right. But I 100% agree with this. We're on a mission and a journey right now, and I'm grateful to the ancestors, to the universe, God, to be here. I just want to thank everyone for participating, and thank you. Follow Dr. Gray Carr. Follow him at Africana Carr, because he's active on Twitter. And thank you for retweeting stuff. I don't even have to ask you to do it. That's what unity looks like.
You teaching. You're master teachers. The world got to see that.
Carr he tweeted something out I ain't even tweet out. I appreciate that. Africana Carr, follow him. You can follow me at Karen Hunter. And thank you so much. We'll see y'all next week.
Yes, ma'am.